Life is not like roads and highways and freeways. It's like the ocean. There really isn't an established pathway. I could get to that island there. There's no set pathway. I mean, I could go directly or I could zigzag. I can maybe go around the island and go from the other side. There's no set way.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Path Found, the podcast about the real, messy, unexpected journeys that lead us to the work we love. I'm Monica Argandonia, and every week I talk with someone whose story proves there's no single right way to build a meaningful life. Today's guest believes that life isn't a straight road with clear exits. It's an ocean. Joon Kim was born in South Korea, lived in Germany, and came to the U.S. as a child, navigating language barriers, cultural expectations, and enormous pressure to succeed. He did everything right until it fell apart. He was dismissed from UCLA, he walked away from pre-med, and for a moment, the future disappeared. But that detour became the foundation for a career spent mentoring students, leading academic programs, and helping others recover from the very setbacks he once faced himself. This conversation is about failure, second chances, cultural expectations, and why not knowing your destination might actually be the point. This is Path Found, and this is Joon Kim. So I am super happy to be here with you, Joon, and to have this conversation. And so as I start all my podcast episodes is tell me about yourself as a kid. What were you like? So give us some background.
Absolutely. So every person has gone through childhood. Maybe the experiences have been different. So my childhood actually was quite, I think, amazing because the fact that before the age of 8, I've lived in 3 different countries. So I was born in Seoul, South Korea. This was in the early 70s. I'll leave it at that. And it was a very different country than what it is today. So born there, first language learned. However, as I was turning 4, my father's work took our family to Munich, Germany. So moved to Germany. And according to my parents, I was attending kindergarten and learning Deutsch in Germany, going to school, learning another language. But my father's work project was completed after 3 more years. And so he was asked to relocate from Germany to the US. And so that was the beginning of my life, basically. I mean, I think of that as the beginning of my true sort of life as a 7.5-year-old who moved to the US, learning English now, which has been obviously the primary language. And it's where I've lived for the rest of my life to current present day. As a kid, I just loved people. My parents would describe how I would light up and get excited anytime they told me we have guests coming over to the house. So that's a little bit about my childhood.
So you were in English, third language, and you were in school. What impact did that have? How hard was it to kind of catch up and fit in?
So that would be 2nd grade. I attended a school called Denker Elementary. It's part of the LA Unified School District. And I remember specifically being pulled out of my regular class once a week to work with an ESL instructors. She was bilingual. She spoke both Korean because at that time, Korean was my dominant language. And so I just remember being pulled from class. And, at first, I didn't know why. I didn't know whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. But, when a young child notices that they're different, more often than not, it is initially perceived as a negative. And so that's kind of what I thought too, that I'm being pulled out and something's wrong. And of course, it turns out it was just to work with me and help me, catch up in the English. And I think when you're that young, you are a sponge, the proverbial, you pick things up very quickly. So I would say between watching cartoons and the once a week intensive language support, I was pretty fluent within a year. And so did very well in school. Math was pretty easy. Science, loved science. PE and a lunch were my favorite activities in school. It really was, because for those watching this and students who have only attended school in the US, what you may not know, and also there's not just a different country, but a different time period. So when I attended school in Korea, lunch wasn't provided. Everyone would have to bring lunch from home, and just even access to the variety of food that I discovered when I came to the US was incredible. I remember pizza was always on Fridays. There was fried chicken, there's taco boats, or I think they called them chalupas back then. And I just remember as a kid, just so happy about the food. I mean, school was great because you learned, but for me in a new country, the food was certainly a big highlight. My parents told me that every day I come from home from school, while most kids might talk about something they learned or friends that they made or what they did, oh, I talked about what I ate.
So, what were you interested in high school? Did you have an idea of what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so high school, I was raised with a very traditional Korean immigrant cultural framework, right? Meaning that my parents voluntarily moved to this country for a better life for all of us. And no, he wasn't the vice president of LG or Samsung. We were a very small, modest family with very minimal resources. So my father, the way he communicated sort of the transition and our purpose in America was for me and my sister, it's just the two of us, that we would excel in school because doing well in school and then going to a great college was the gateway into the perfect life. And so my high school, even prior to high school, I always focused a lot of my time and effort on school because that was probably the only identity that I had at that age, right? Other than, eating, it was really trying to excel in school. So for me, I was very much in that college bound menu. And so I was in all the honors classes, a lot of AP classes. I mean, it's been so long. We're talking over 30 years ago, but I know I took at least 15 to 20 AP classes. And some of that was just because that's what was expected. I cannot accurately say that those were completely my choice, that I wanted to do those, but I think this is where also you need to acknowledge the reality that when you're that age, you have, a limited ability to make your own decisions. I mean, you're developing those skills, but you have people who are older, who are more experienced, and certainly specialists who are more familiar with various areas of domains. You heed their advice. You sort of listen to what they say. And so for me, high school was good times. A lot of academics. I got involved with sports, loved basketball, but the tennis team needed one more person. And guess what? I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. So I picked up tennis. So in high school, I played basketball and tennis throughout my entire high school career. And so that took up much of my extracurricular activities and time. I did not work. I know some students, you are working while you're in school, high school, college. For me, in high school, while I was not working at a formal job of, place of employment, my parents did own a small mom and pop business in central Los Angeles, South Central Los Angeles. So I helped out every weekend. So that was something initially, it wasn't an issue because I just did what I was told. However, turns out that when you turn into a junior, senior, and you have friends and you think you know everything, it started to pose a bit of a challenge because my parents needed me to help out at the store. However, I wanted to hang out with friends. I mean, we're going to the movies, we're going down to San Diego. And so, but all of this to say, high school was great. I enjoyed my high school years.
Did your parents go to college?
So my mom did not. She only went to high school in Korea, and then she got a job as a bank teller. And that's the extent of her sort of professional career, if you will, because her generation, I mean, really, and culturally speaking too, the woman was expected to get married, have children, become a mother, and take care of the kids at home. And so she really sort of did adopt that role for a long period of time until my father expanded this small business to two different locations. My mother did return back to, quote, the labor force. And so she was running one of the stores. My father, he did graduate from college. It was in Korea, but that was it. I mean, his bachelor's degree. He did not go any further. However, despite, sort of not too extensive of a formal education, because I know that some parents, masters and doctorate and so forth, they always valued education. It was expected. And remember, again, my father never let me forget why he made the sacrifice to bring our family here. And so that was a lot of pressure as a kid, feeling like this is all on me. I need to do well because my parents made a sacrifice. And so I need to fulfill my end of the bargain, if you will.
So you're doing well in high school, you're involved in sports, you've got friends, and all of that's going well. Did you know what you wanted to do? I mean, you were expected to go to college, but what do you major in?
So, my father, as strict as he is, the man does have a little bit of sense of humor because he, after about 5 years of living in the US, he said, and I'm translating this for you guys, I think I know how parenting works here in the US. It is about giving your children choices, not just telling them what to do. And I got so excited. Like, finally, this man gets it. I better late than never. Well, it turns out his follow up was, I understand it's about giving your kids choices. So I'm going to let you choose any specialty in medicine you want to pursue.
That's great.
So I said, well, in that case, I had 2 seizures as a child. And so I said, you know what? I'll be a neurologist. I want to be just like Dr. Green. I'm going to be a neurologist. And so that was kind of the placeholder. But I just don't think at that age you really know what you want to do. So for me, one of the most important advice and helpful guidance is when you think you might be interested in something, check it out. I love Costco. Okay. They didn't pay me to plug in Costco, but I love Costco because they have samples. And the reason why the samples are great is you get to taste it and see if you like it. And then you can make a decision whether you want to buy a huge 20-gallon of whatever drink you want. And so remember, I did not have the weekends to go exploring. I didn't have the social network to ask my father, hey, can I shadow your engineering friend? Hey, mom, can I shadow your pharmacist friend? I really did not have those opportunities of exposure. All I had was TV shows, which again, I think every decade there is some TV show about medicine and doctors. And so I really did not know what I wanted. But it was a good placeholder. I was going to be a neurologist. And so when I got to college, I attended UCLA for my undergrad. I was a biology pre-med, like every incoming freshman at UCLA, it seems these days, pre-med. And the crazy thing is, I didn't even get involved in a clinical setting with patient interaction until my junior year. So that's the crazy part, which I hope those of you that are in school right now and maybe early on get that early exposure, because the earlier you realize that the more informed decisions you can make. And so for me, I didn't know until junior year of college that while helping people is wonderful and I love it, it's not within the context of a medical setting. Because that junior year when I volunteered at the hospital, I just realized it is not for me. There's all different sorts of personalities, characteristics, dispositional traits, and life goals for that matter, the type of lifestyle. And it just turned into the realization that I was really trying to fulfill my father, to be exact. My mother, she was more open. I mean, isn't that ironic? My mother, with only high school education, was the one who had the wisdom to tell me that, she could see me do anything, but medicine maybe not so, because of the incredible demand on your sort of emotional currency, if you will. When you're in healthcare, you need to be empathetic and you need to really connect with your patients. And it takes its toll, right? Talking to people every day where they're coming to you with bad news, or, they're in pain and agony. Nobody comes to you to the hospital for good reason. I mean, they're usually coming to you because there's a health concern or a problem. So yeah, junior year is when I pivoted. No more medicine for me, no more neurology.
So then what?
No more scrubs, no ideas of wearing a scrub. So then I changed my major my junior year of undergrad, which means almost inevitably it's going to delay my graduation. And it did by 1 year. So rather than graduating in 4 years, I graduated in 5 years. But there's an asterisk next to that 5 years because I did not do those 5 years continuously. I did have actually a 2-year involuntary hiatus. And what I mean by that is I was actually dismissed from the university due to a violation of an academic policy that I was not aware of. I had met with my advisor and she advised me to take W's. For those of you that aren't familiar, W is a withdrawal. It's where you drop classes in college. And instead of getting a letter grade, you get a W on your transcript. And so it was the summer of 1995 that I was dismissed from UCLA. And what does a, 20-year-old do when college is no longer what I'm doing. I decided to do something very different, very out of the box, something just completely on my own. And so I started my career as a movie and TV show extra. And
All right.
so,
So wait, before you get to that, I want to go back to the academic issue. Was it because you had too many W's?
no, it's when you're on probation, you can't withdraw. That's the policy. When you
But you
are,
didn't know that.
when you are on, I didn't know that because, I'm thinking, well, my advisor's telling me she's recommending I take the W.
How come you didn't appeal it?
I didn't even know about appealing. What is an appeal? Appeal is like the outside of a fruit. Remember, I did learn English and I speak the language, but in terms of my understanding of how things work, how systems work, how do colleges work, how, these types of things I just did not know. And so also coming from my culture, you listen to what authority says. And so if you have an academic advisor who tells you they recommend you drop and take W's,
You
I
do.
I obey and I withdrew. I dropped all my classes, which obviously now looking in hindsight realize is immediate grounds for dismissal because it violated a university policy. So that's why, while there's always the curiosity of what would have happened had I been dismissed from the university, but I also think I'm very grateful that that allowed me the opportunity to really do my own thing and adventure into something that I don't think any of my high school friends and classmates would have ever anticipated. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. A bunch of people saw me on various TV shows. Hey, isn't that Joon walking in the background? And people reached out to me like, what are you doing these days? So
Why did you even
yeah,
think to do that? Acting.
I think I like novelty. I like things, variety. I like changes. And I recall specifically seeing in the UCLA newspaper, there was an ad for extras needed. And it's the most important words were no skills necessary, no talent necessary. I don't think it said no talent, but it just said new faces needed. And so I said, that could be me. And so I just went and got myself registered. This was way back before all the technology. So everything was Polaroid and paper. And so they took a picture and then they had all these different questions asking me about my talents and skills. Can I juggle? Can I play sports? Can I ice skate? And basically a full inventory of my abilities. Because, when they're filming, they do need people in the environment, right? If you have a main actor, main characters in the storyline, they could be at a shopping mall, they could be at the gym. There's got to be people around. So it was fun. But ironically, those 2 years that I was out of school was when I realized I really wanted to be in school. So
You did extra work for 2 years.
So I did the extra work full time for about 8 months. And then after the 8 months, I was eligible to become a member of the Screen Actors Guild. And so I was a member of SAG. You needed a membership dues for each of the respective organizations. But all of this to say that I was making a little bit more money as a union member. But again, no matter how much the increase in earnings, it wasn't going to be a realistic career option. I mean, I know that sounds antithetical to sort of the Disney wish upon a star and if you dream it, it will come true. But I think I was honest with myself that, it is very, very difficult because of the sheer numbers. There's so many people, not just in California. You have to understand, people move to Southern California from all over the country and even the world.
Right.
Just in hopes of making it. And so I realized, I enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy every moment that I can, get to play different characters and, pretend, right? Make believe. I mean, it was great. Met amazing people from all over the world. But fortuitously, I received communication from UCLA that according to their records that I did not graduate, which is true. I mean, I got kicked out, so I did not graduate, but they had a readmission program that if I were to take 5 classes and get a certain GPA, that I could be readmitted. And so I took that as a sign that it's my second chance. So I remember I took a couple of classes at El Camino, city of Torrance, and then I took a couple of classes at UCLA. I did achieve the GPA threshold that they were looking for. And so I was eligible to return. I went back. First thing I did was change my major. I was no longer bio pre-med. I switched to psychology and education because I was just really fascinated with people's motivation. Why are some people really motivated and others not? And then why is it also that some people learn more effectively than others? So that right there was probably the impetus for going into education for me. Right after I graduated UCLA, I was a middle school science teacher. And so I did that for 2 years. Realized I love teaching. I love helping people. I love education, but just maybe not that age group. So that's where I made a commitment to further my own education and enroll in a master's program. I applied to only two different programs. I applied to USC and Loyola Marymount, and both masters were in education, emphasizing working in higher education, working for the colleges. And I was accepted to both. But of course, at that age, with my background, my parents, they never heard of LMU, but they have heard of USC. So I ended up going to USC, and which turned out to be great. I think I get to be that unique hybrid between UCLA and USC, a Brojan. I am a
A
Brojan.
brooch.
And that right there was when just my, finally pinpointing that I wanted to work in higher education was realized when I was in my master's program. And so finished my master's. I think even before I finished the master's degree, I was able to find a job on campus at USC as a biology advisor. Isn't that funny? I mean, someone who was bio pre-med, who was dismissed from the university, who did not even finish the major. Turns out when I asked my supervisor many years after, he said that was the reason why he chose me for the position, that I was very personally familiar with the whole bio major pathway and what it entails, the ups and downs, the emotional roller coaster. And so he was right. I was able to share and impart some of my own experiences, and my students benefited from that.
It's amazing how it comes full circle, right? Like,
It does. It really does. And not realizing that negative event could actually return later in life to be the positive. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why it sounds so interesting. And when it's taken out of context and people hear me say, I am so glad I got dismissed from college. I am so glad I failed as a pre-med. If you just hear that, that just seems odd. But if you know what I am doing now, which is I've been working with college students, graduate students for the last 15 years, working with students to help them pursue medicine, getting into medical school. And so, yeah, it is full circle.
so when you graduated, you got your master's, but you stayed longer.
Correct. So this is where mentors are very important, everybody. But you already knew that. I mean, if you're watching this video, you know the importance of mentors. I had two mentors from my master's program. I went to each of them separately and I sought their advice on my career. I said, I love what I'm doing right now as a biology advisor, but the advising career, it's not much of a progression to it. So for example, like for the faculty career path in higher education, you have sort of a set pathway. You start off as maybe an adjunct faculty and then assistant professor, you move up to associate professor, then you move up to full professor, then you can move up to a department chair endowed position faculty. I mean, there is a clear sort of progression of how your career can, progress, but not for advisor. It was like you're an advisor, you're a level 1 advisor, level 2 advisors. But I mean, when I really looked into it deeper, I saw that I couldn't be someone in their, let's say 30s, 40s, 50s, being able to provide for a family, because I knew I wanted a family. And so I needed to go further. And then my mentors both said, well, why don't you get your doctorate? I mean, if you're already working for the university, and that's one of the great perks of working for a private university, is they often give you tuition credit, tuition remission. So after both of them suggested that I continue, that I wasn't being paid enough, that I should be compensated in other ways. And so I took their advice, applied to doctoral programs, and USC accepted me. And that really opened up what I consider to be my sort of the golden years of my career. I mean, I think I'm there right now. I've been a director and currently officially senior director, and that you can sustain a family. Barely in Southern California, but it is doable. But I've also been adjunct faculty for different colleges and universities. I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about being in academia. is that you can really make your career what you want it to be. You can have the flexibility, and it's also easy to move around because there's colleges wherever you go.
Hmm.
And so that's been sort of the majority of my, let's just say 20 plus years of professional work experience.
So this position that you have now with the Keck Graduate Institute, what is it exactly that you do?
So Keck Graduate Institute, small graduate school, part of the Claremont colleges. There's 7 colleges in the Claremont Consortium, and KGI is one of the 2 graduate schools. Our school really, in its origin, was about preparing students to go work for biotech companies. Another way to think about it is those that want to use science to make money, but also to help patients and, make a difference in the lives of others. So while that was the original program of KGI, like everything, has evolved. It has grown. It's added different programs. So the program that I serve as director is what's known as a post-bac academic enhancer program. It's a program that was designed to help students become more competitive so they can successfully get into medical school, PA school, dental school, and so forth. Because it's so competitive, it's just not enough for students to go to undergrad college. I mean, I suppose if you go and get amazing grades and test scores and do 15 extracurricular activities and just do extremely well, then you can get in. Sure. But not everyone's like that, and everyone has their own journey. And so the program that I oversee, it really is for students who have maybe taken some time off after college, maybe a year, 2. I mean, I've had students who have been working, they've been in the workforce for 5 up to maybe even 7 years. And then they realize, I'm getting these paychecks. I have a roof over my head, but my dream is to become a doctor and I want to go to medical school. So those types of students are the ones that are in my program. And I've been doing it for 15 years at KGI. So many amazing, wonderful students that maybe their undergrad wasn't, very, very strong, but it's okay because you can't possibly think that all the doctors out there that are practicing medicine right now, they weren't all A students, right? So yeah, it's a really cool program.
So just going back a little bit on this program, because I never knew programs like this existed. How do students find out about that? Like, how do they know? And are you the only one? Like,
No. So the post-bac program really, so there's 2 types. There's 2 types of post-bac program. There's career changers and then there's academic enhancers. So my program, the KGI program, is an enhancer. It's for students who have already taken all the science courses or most of the science courses. So which means, as the name would suggest, a post-bac career changer program is for students who had that epiphany later on. Maybe they're 30 years old, they're working as an engineer. They realize, oh my gosh, I do not like engineering. I want to go into medicine. Or it could be a college student who has been majoring in English and then, maybe fell ill, had to go to the hospital and then had that epiphany. I want to go to med school. So what they'll need to do is they'll need to establish that science foundation. They need to take biology, chemistry, physics, anatomy, physiology. There's sort of these cluster of highly, highly recommended courses that students should take if they are interested in pursuing medical school or pharmacy school or dental school. These graduate health professional programs, they differ a little bit, but one consistency is you got to take science courses because when you get to these schools, you're going to be taking only science classes, right? So you're not going to go to medical school and take history or philosophy. I mean, although these days, a lot of medical schools and various graduate health professional schools are integrating other disciplines, what we call interdisciplinary approach. So they might inject a little bit of ethics when they go over, certain science courses. So my program is not the only one.
so do you like what you do?
I love what I get to do. I get to help people, right? I mean, there's something hardwired in us. When we help another person, it feels good. And it's a way to connect with each other. And so being able to do what I get to do, many of the former students still keep in touch, which I love. Right after COVID, I had a former student of mine reach out, ask me to, be interested in grabbing lunch together. He's a psychiatrist. So we did. And that's where I was reminded how old I really am because he told me when I was his advisor at USC, 2005. So that was decades ago. And so he is now in his late 30s, early 40s. He's married, he has kids. And so to be able to keep in touch and to know that I played a small role.
Yeah, you've had an impact.
Exactly. So
What's ahead for you? Is this it?
no, I don't know why I keep going to food. I had lunch. I promise I had lunch today, but even my favorite food, I don't want to eat it all the time. And I need variety. And so I think one of the things I haven't shared with all of you is that about 2 years ago is when my wife and we founded a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to providing housing for individuals recovering from substance abuse. And so that is something that has been sort of on the back burner. It's been something that I tend to wherever free time allows me to. But your question of moving forward in the near future, I would definitely say that I would see myself more involved in that space. Our organization, our house is not located in California. It's actually located in the state of New Mexico. And so I could potentially see maybe part of the year living out there, but getting more involved with that. I see that as a pretty important future. So yeah.
So, what advice would you give college students today? I mean, you had a little bit of a rocky road, but it ended up, doing really well.
So I think the most important thing, if you only remember one thing from this entire conversation here, is life is not like roads and highways and freeways. It's like the ocean. There really isn't an established pathway. If you think of it that way, then you will only go down the roads that you think you can go down. Whereas serendipitously, my background is the ocean. I could get to that island there. There's no set pathway. I mean, I could go directly or I could zigzag. I can maybe go around the island and go from the other side. There's no set way. And as long as you are learning and growing, I think that is the most important thing. I mean, I think there's so many analogies and metaphors that have been used. I think one of the most common one is it's not the destination, it's the journey. I don't like cliches, but cliches exist for a reason because they do hold parts of truth. And I think that is definitely one that there's a lot of truth in it. Thinking about going on a cruise. I went on a cruise for the first time about 10 years ago, and I really thought it was about where I'm going. And then I realized, no, it's about relaxing. It's about eating. And so the destination, yeah, it's important, but let's face it. Sometimes you don't even know where your destination is. And the journey is going to help you identify where that is. And I mean, think about watching a movie. I mean, I know cinematically, artistically, some directors have made their film chronologically backwards, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? The beginning of the movie is the end of the story and they go backwards. Okay, I get that. That was intentional. But imagine if we all watched movies backwards on purpose. They were not created with the intent to be watched backwards, but we just chose to. That'd kind of be odd, wouldn't it? I mean, you know the ending, you know how it ends, and then you go backwards. But in many ways, I think that's how we think as young people and as students, that you got to know the destination and that's how you get there. Just like watching this movie. No, the way you really extract the most enjoyment and personal fulfillment is by going through the journey. And so try different things, see what you like. Be honest with yourself. I think that's one of the other things too. I think we sometimes do things because we think that's what's expected of us, or we do things because that's what's acceptable. So for example, even going to college, okay? Yes, I have my letters after my name, but I realize I didn't have to, that I could have been equally fulfilled had I bypassed all that, because there are other ways to help people than to work at a college or university setting. And so I would just encourage all of you to be honest with yourself. Go explore. Talk to people. Hey, excuse me, can I ask you a question? Talk to people, right? Don't be so afraid to talk to people. Would you be available to answer some questions? I would love to learn more about what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Or these days, you can send an email. Absolutely. Hey, I found your information online and I think I might be interested in what you're doing. Would you be available? And people, if they truly love what they do, they're going to want to share it.
Yeah.
And they will say, when do you want to meet? Right. And so
knowing what you know now, what would you tell your UCLA self?
So what I would say is prepare a presentation for my father to have him understand where I'm coming from, because I don't think I advocated for myself. I think I just thought a good son meant just doing everything he tells me to do. I think had I presented sort of a very thought out, sort of well put together presentation with, facts and data, like, hey, Dad, this is kind of what I'm thinking. These are some of the advantages and disadvantages. These are some of the considerations. I think if I would have presented that to him, he would have seen my passion, my interest, and, I wasn't just making this whimsical decision. I like to believe that he would have been open to me pursuing what I wanted. But again, the truth is, honestly, I can't guarantee I would have known what I wanted to do at that age. And I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves that it actually impedes our ability to discover what we want to do. So we've all had that moment, right? When we have somebody's name or a little piece of information. Oh my gosh, it's just on the tip of my tongue. The more you try to retrieve it, the more impossible it is. And the moment you say, I'll forget it, it'll come to me later. Oh, it just came to me, right? That happens so often. And I see sort of our education, our career, our life path to be very similar. The more we get fixated and try to look at it, it makes it a little more difficult. But to be open, to be honest with yourself, and to try new things, go outside that proverbial, here's that cliche, the box, right? Go out of your comfort zone. That allows you to discover what you did not know because you do not know what you don't know. And so again, I think for me, my life has been very fortunate that I have lived in 3 different countries. And so at a very early age, I realized you got to try it out, especially when we're talking about food. That looks kind of interesting. I don't know. But you just got to try it. And when you do that, you realize what you don't like, but you also discover, wow, I do like that, One of the fun things I always share, a food item I was introduced to here in the US, but I did not like it in the beginning, but now I love it, is okra. Okra is this slimy plant. It's like, who eats this? This is gross. But again, tried it. And sometimes it takes repeated exposure. You can't just try something once. You do need to give it, a decent amount of time. And that's why as a parent, my wife and I, with our 3 children, we didn't force them to do any specific extracurricular activity, but we did make an arrangement where if they told us they wanted to check out some sport or music or art, that we would support them, we would pay for it. They just needed to stick with it for at least a semester, right? So they can't just try it for a week or 2 and say, I don't like it and quit. You got to stick it out for at least 1 semester, 1 term.
Joon, thank you so much. It was great talking to you, and you have made an incredible impact. So thank you for your work.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And any other opportunities, if you have opportunities to bring people together, because that's what you're doing, Monica. You are bringing people together. I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to Path Found. If anything we talked about today connected with you or gave you a new perspective, we'd love it if you subscribed, left a review, or shared the episode with someone you care about. You can also find us on Instagram at Path Found Podcast. To explore more stories, resources, and ways to get involved, visit KeystoneNetwork.org. This podcast is just one part of the journey. At Keystone Network, we're helping young people and anyone figuring it out as they go build meaningful futures, one step at a time. A huge thank you to my podcast editor, David Strutt. You can find him on LinkedIn for helping bring these stories to life, and to Elizabeth Miner at Silvermine Creative for the beautiful artwork and web design. And if you're on your own path, navigating the unknown, making a pivot, or simply figuring it out as you go, just know you're not alone. The route may not be linear, but there's always a way forward. I'm Monica Argandonia, and I'll see you next time on Path Found.